Welcome to Reclaiming Narratives,
a podcast by 4D.
My name is B.
I'm Winnie.
I'm Nika.
I'm Hannah.
And we are four friends
who met in our HR roles in the corporate world.
And we're intentional about fostering a sisterhood
that has truly been special.
In this podcast, we invite you to come and be a part of our real life conversations
about all things being thriving Black women in the professional world.
Our WhatsApp convos have left the chat,
and we invite you to be part of it.
Enjoy.
Hey ladies, I hope you're good. So, you will not believe the bank holiday Monday I've had. A bit eventful, so please let me know when you're all free and I will give you the download. Speak soon.
So Nix, what happened?
You won't believe this, but I had a freak accident at home. Finally managed to get myself to safety. I called 999, asked for help, and I was told to make my way to the hospital myself. Now, we've all spoken about self-advocacy. We know how important that is, but I didn't think I was going to have to advocate for myself in that way. So based on the response that I got, I disconnected the call, I called back, I spoke to another call operator who clearly understood my plight. They then dispatched emergency services, and I was taken to the hospital. But I keep going back to the fact that had I not advocated for myself in that way, I may not have got the help that I needed. And yeah, it's just so disappointing that today we still find ourselves having to advocate for ourselves, not only in the line of work, but for our health, for our children, for our well-being. It's never ending. And I think it'll be good just to unpack this a bit.
I mean, it's really upsetting to hear that in this day and age, in big old 2024, we're still having to talk about things like maternal outcomes. You know, Black women are still 5 times more likely to die in labour. I think we've got it down to 4 times because of 5 times more with the great work they're doing and the education. But it just goes to show how much more we need to speak up to be seen, to be heard, to be understood, to be respected, to be supported. And it just upsets me that we're still having to have this conversation today.
I don't think it's so interesting because I think we recognise when you are self-advocating for yourself, but not everybody does. And so sometimes people don't even do that. So, you know, there will be hundreds and hundreds of people that would just say, okay, no worries, and put the phone down and make their way in pain to the hospital. And it even goes back to, I know, if you think about it in a work setting, and sometimes when you're not believed, that's because actually you have to advocate for yourself because people don't believe in you, and that could be for so many different reasons. And we know as ethnically diverse people, as Black women, that is very prominent for us in terms of how we have to show up, and then also how we almost have to overcompensate for who we are and what we stand for because of this piece of stuff.
I think at work, sometimes when I talk to lots of people, it's being able to articulate what you want when you hear the no. So a lot of the time we all hear the no and people just go, okay, that's a no, and then that's it. I think what's important is being able to say, actually, here's what I need from you for me to succeed in my role. And that's one thing I've had to learn, because you talk to people and it's all like, it's a two-way combination at work. You're there to provide your skill, but you're also, needing things to be set up for success. And I don't think, I certainly haven't done that for majority of my career, going in and saying, here's this that I need to be able to succeed. I've just gone in and thought everything was on me. So if I wasn't succeeding, it was always, what am I doing wrong? And now I'm starting to go, well, actually, if you want me to do that, this has to be in place and that has to be in place. And I think the more you can do that, the more things gel in place. But I think it's definitely a skill set that
takes some time.
Absolutely.
Right?
It absolutely does. And I think before you can even advocate for yourself and actually articulate what it is you need, I think you need to first and foremost know yourself. I thought that's the start of self-advocacy. It's knowing yourself, then knowing your needs, and then being able to articulate what it is that you need from people to help you get to where you need to get to. But the reality is, and not through any fault of anyone's own, some people are just unable to advocate for themselves because they don't know themselves yet. And they haven't been placed in situations where they've had to grow in confidence, and they have, the vocabulary to articulate themselves in a way where they will be comprehended, which means, unfortunately, they don't get what they are due. They don't get what they're deserving of. And the stakes can be very high. It can be very costly.
Yeah.
I think it's important to talk about giving yourself permission permission to want what you want as well.
Absolutely.
Especially when sometimes you have to knock on that door more than once.
Yep.
I heard a quote that said, sometimes if you hear no, it's not because it's a no, it's a not right now, or you're asking the wrong person. And it takes a certain kind of strength to say, actually, I do want this. I deserve this. I deserve to ask for it. And if someone says no, I'm going to ask somebody else because I still want that thing. So I think what you say about knowing what you want is so important, because you can't go through that sequence of events without knowing what you want. You need that kind of resilience to stay on that track and believe in what you're asking for.
Yeah, and also your value, because when I think about self-advocacy, especially in the workplace, there have been years and years when maybe it's come to the end of the year and we get to performance reviews. And actually, you know, your idea and view on your performance is different to that of your line manager. And it's only recently, maybe the last 5, maybe the last 10 years, that I've realized that self-advocacy is really talking and being able to articulate what you have brought, the value that you have. And I remember speaking to a couple of mentees and saying to them, well, do you write down your achievements? They're like, well, no, I don't, because my boss would already know that. I said, well, that isn't always true. And sometimes self-advocacy is recording what you do regularly, checking in, getting feedback, getting 360 feedback, so that when it comes to the end of the year, you are advocating for yourself. Because we all know at the end of the day, if we don't advocate for ourselves, who else is, right? And so that's, for me, what really stands out when it talks about self-advocacy. It's like, how do you make sure that you have your value and you can share and articulate that value to anyone else?
Absolutely. And I think it's also about setting the scene. Like, I love, there's something that Nikke does really well, is she sets the scene up front. So even in the example you gave, it's not just about writing your achievements, it's telling your boss in those one-to-ones, I think I'm doing a really good job. So it gives them the opportunity to state an alternative if that's how they're feeling, but they should be under no confusion as to how you think you're doing. And that's just setting the scene. I think I'm doing a good job. Here are all the things I'm doing. And it's like ... Fill in whether you think, rather than waiting until the end of the year to hear what they have to say. Because at least they know if it's going to be a difficult message, because they'll be able to say, I don't think B thinks, you know, she's done X or she's done Y. But for them to go in thinking, I'm just going to tell her, and not know how you react is a big game changer. And just setting the scene, I think that's quite important as well in self-advocating for yourself.
It really is. And, you know, if I think about the connection between knowing your worth and setting the scene, sometimes advocating for yourself isn't you articulating your needs and then being expectant in terms of how the person's going to respond or what they might follow up with. Sometimes it's you articulating that you have certain expectations, they've not been met, and because you know your worth, you're willing to walk away from that situation that is no longer serving you. And it can be painful at times, especially when you don't feel there is a fight, when you have advocated for yourself in terms of expressing your knowledge of your worth and what you bring to the table. But it's really important that even if others struggle to, you know, understand our worth and see the value that we see in ourselves, that we never lose sight of the value that is attached to us. So knowing yourself is super important, and it helps you know when to just, you know, part ways of a situation.
I love that you talk about value and expectations interchangeably, because the two do go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
There's been so many times in my own career, or when I've been mentoring people or coaching people, and they'll say, Winnie, I see myself at this grade in 2 years. But sometimes the people who will help you get there don't see that vision or expectation that you are seeing of yourself. So you need to be able to communicate and advocate for yourself. And, you know, in the spirit of reclaiming narratives, reclaim your own narrative and bring that person on the journey with you. So it's, I see myself here in 2 years. And, you know, we all know of a boss who's looked at you and probably thought, no, I don't see you there. And like you said about walking away, that enables you, when you have that conversation and get that response, you're able to say, actually, you are not on that journey with me. And we talk a lot about our board of directors. Actually, it's time to retire you from my board and bring somebody else on who gets where I'm trying to go, understands my expectations, knows my value, knows my worth, and helps me on that journey to get to that place.
Completely agree. And you touched on a really good point, which is there being a misalignment at times when you advocate for yourself in terms of how you see yourself and how others around you might see you. And that's absolutely fine, because the reality is that it's you versus you. It's not you versus somebody else. And so long as you're in the driving seat and you're in control of that narrative, I think that's what really matters. And we shouldn't allow the reactions of others or their lack of belief in the vision that we have for ourselves and the trajectory that we've set to discourage us from continuing to walk on that path.
I suppose for me, I completely agree. I think there's an element of, you have to be open, because absolutely you can advocate for yourself. And sometimes we do see ourselves in a higher regard. And so there is a humility about, okay, this is where I see me. This is where you see me. I don't quite see myself where you are, but I can take the feedback that these are the areas that I need to work on. So, because I really want us to make sure that, you know, yes, absolutely, we want to self-advocate for ourselves, but recognizing that actually we may have gaps. And
it's a balance. That's what I was thinking, because I was going to ask a question around, how do you know? Like, it's almost like checking yourself. Like, if I'm that chick and I'm going to be this in 2 years' time, am I being realistic?
Exactly.
Or is there, and it's a balance. And I think that's why Winnie mentioned a board of directors. It's important, because
absolutely.
I know if Winnie came to me and said, I'm going to be this in 2 years' time, we're real enough to say, babe, okay, let's broaden that to 5 years or 2 years. You could do that in 6 months, babe. In fact, you're there. Like, you have people to soundboard off, so that when you're speaking to that person in power, you have enough sources of feedback to be able to back up your claim. So I think it's just the balancing act. I hear you, Hannah, about understanding what's realistic, what's aspirational, and so you can get the help that you need. But you don't want to be misaligned. Yeah.
And you don't need to go.
I was going to say as well, like, also knowing what to do with the various types of feedback that you'll receive. Absolutely. And this is where the board of advisor piece comes in, right? You should definitely be open to the feedback. You want to be somebody who, you know, is open-minded, has a certain level of awareness. So be open to that, receive it. But you then need to be able to discern between what feedback you need to act on based on who it's coming from and what feedback you don't need to act on. Because the reality is that some may be projecting, some may have struggled to truly understand you. And there's knowing you and there's knowing the depths of you, like knowing you on a very personal level, the things that keep you up at night, the journey that you've been on, the direction in which you're headed. And I feel that it's those types of individuals who we would need to prioritize adding to our board of advisors and be more in tune with the feedback that they give, but completely agree, like, you know, you can't go alone. We need to journey with people we trust, who understand our vision for ourselves as well and want the best for us.
Yeah. And I always check myself, because we are all senior women. And so today it's very easy to advocate for ourselves. If I thought about Hannah 17, I don't know if I would have all of the tools and also the confidence to do that.
It's
and I think you grow, and as you grow and you learn more about yourself and you get sure about your value, you then can advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
I think if I was asking myself, well, what are the steps to advocate for yourself, and I'd love to hear your perspectives. I think it would be I can advocate for myself because I'm so confident in the work that I do. And so I think for me, the first step was get good on your craft. Like, there's a lot of people that want to take shortcuts nowadays, right? They want to self-advocate, they want to get here in 2 years, but they're not doing the work. And so for us, for me particularly, I feel like the confidence for self-advocacy has come because I've really learned the work that I do. I don't know if there's any other. What do you think?
I had a boss once who said to me, Winnie, always validate your assumptions. Don't just think you might have observed something. Go back and get maybe 3 pieces of evidence to either counteract or validate what you've observed. And I think the same thing comes back down to you and your expectations and how you are perceived. So 3 additional feedback points might help you see, actually, are they all different? And therefore, actually, what is the truth here? You know, where's the gray area? Where's the black and white? But I also feel it allows you, I think there's something about mentorship and sponsorship or role models. You think, actually, this is where I want to go. How do I validate that this is the right journey so that you can be sure of what you want to do? Because then you can fully get behind your self-advocacy because you're sure of what you want to do. Whereas if you build self-advocacy on assumptions, you'll be very wavering in that journey. You'll just be back and forth and not sure of yourself.
Completely agree.
I agree. I think for me, the key here is getting to know yourself. And I think as I've grown, apart from getting good at my craft, I think I understand what my deal breakers are and my values. And so I'm very confident in that. There are just certain things that if I'm in the workplace, I don't think you get that part of me. And so I call them my PTSDs. So as soon as I'm triggered, I'm like, no, you don't get past here. And work is work and personal life is personal life. So I think the more I'm able to know that and articulate that, it then means I'm also able to articulate what I need for everything to be balanced. But it comes with time because as we change, our life situation changes, the things we think are important changes. But the more that firms up, the more I've been able to go, this is exactly, and I also know what I don't want, which is just as important. You can run that check, but if these are the, if this is the context around it, no, thank you, because this is important to me. So that definitely helps.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I would put it down to 3 things. So I think before you go into whatever forum it is to advocate yourself, ask yourself what the desired outcome is, because I think that helps you to frame the narrative or the conversation in a way where you walk away feeling that you've achieved what you set out to, right? Because you advocating for yourself, if you're resigning, is going to look very different to you advocating for yourself if you're expecting somebody to change your title or to come back and adjust your compensation. So you've got that. I always try as much as possible to take the emotion out of it as well. Now, I'm not saying the emotions are not valid, that's not it, but sometimes we need to be mindful of our reaction to our emotions. We want to ensure that in that moment where we're advocating for ourselves, that people truly comprehend. So I try to find a way to eliminate as much of the emotion out of what it is I'm going to communicate. And the third thing I would say is have a track record that backs up that attempt to advocate for yourself. I will admit, I was a terrible personal assistant when I first started out as a PA, and I lacked awareness and I didn't know my blind spots. And my first performance review was abysmal. I would never have advocated for myself in that moment, even though I wasn't happy with the outcome. You need to ensure that if you are going to go and advocate for yourself, like you've all said, you have the evidence, you have the illustrative examples, you've got the feedback, so that when you deliver whatever message you deliver, it's then the ball's in the court for the recipient to do something about it if they don't want to regret losing you. So I would put it down to those 3 things.
I also think there's something about not self-gaslighting. Like, that's a journey I've been on a lot over the last few months, because with everything you said, I feel once again, if you're not sure about what you're about, sometimes before even someone has something negative to say about you or feedback about you, you're gaslighting yourself. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the problem. Or maybe they're just responding that way because of how I acted. And I think it's so important that you are clear and have a strong conviction so that you can be clear, not just on the positives, but also the development areas that, like a bit like you said, actually you have that self-awareness, but sometimes we gaslight ourselves and create narratives that aren't there.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so important to surround yourself. You said it earlier, right? Surround yourself with people at different levels, right? So your peer group, right? But then also leaders, because if you have strong mentors in the workplace, they will check that for you. Yes. If you go and you're gaslighting yourself, but yet you've built a relationship with them, they will tell you that actually no, that isn't true. We will tell you that isn't true. And so sometimes we feel like we have to go alone, especially when we're earlier in your career. You feel like you can't ask, you don't want to be seen as weak, you don't want to, but actually we know the value and benefit of having strong peer group support or having leaders who back you. So I think you're right, absolutely. Be aware of gaslighting yourself, but then also make sure that you are connected to a network that can also help you with that, because it's very easy to go deeper and deeper into a hole, and then what you find is you become stagnant, you don't move, you don't do anything because you haven't got anyone else to pull you out of that.
Completely agree. And that's one of the beauties of this group. I felt that I've truly been able to be my authentic self. I have come to you when I have won and achieved all sorts of successes, and I've come to you at the lowest of my lows, like at my most vulnerable times, and you guys have been there. You've helped me understand where perhaps I'm not seeing things through an alternative perspective. You have validated my experiences, you give me words of encouragement, and I really hope that every woman out there finds a true sisterhood that really wants the best for them and is with them, you know, throughout the lows, and to be with them to jubilate during the highs as well. You can't do this life alone.
Absolutely not. I think it's really interesting because I was going to go on my soapbox and start talking to Winnie about feedback. And, you know, when you ask people for feedback, they'll tell you you're doing a great job. So that helps in those moments. But something happened last week to me, which it was unsolicited feedback. And I think my takeaway wasn't so much the feedback, it was for me to go, actually, when I see someone doing a good job, I should tell them.
Yep.
So I was in a meeting, quite a senior meeting. And then I was talking to, she was a PA, and she just said to me, I noticed on the call when you were presenting, you said sorry. So I don't know if you noticed you did that, and she, verbatim, you deserve to be in that room. You do not need to apologize. Now, I don't remember saying that word, but I took that feedback and I was like, thanks, you know, now I'll be more conscious. But what I loved was she shared that with me. I didn't ask her. And it was just great for me to hear that. And I thought, you know what, there's opportunity for me to do that for other people. Just, you know, whether it's a good job, whether it's constructive feedback, whatever it is, because to your point, when you're gaslighting yourself, you can twist all the compliments negatively. Oh, maybe they were being nice. Oh, maybe they saw me on a good day, but, you know, every other day that week was bad, you know. But when it's unsolicited, sometimes I think that holds quite a bit of weight. And I think the more we can do that for other people as well.
They say feedback's a gift, isn't it?
Really
It
is.
So
really
you
is.
get to choose what you keep and what you discard.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because that was a really lovely way to just give you some feedback. You had a choice, right? You can even say, actually, thank you, but I didn't ask you. Or you took it and that you
because I was
appreciated
like,
it.
I must be saying sorry without, you know, and I definitely am not sorry.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm obviously saying it. So for me, it was a good thing to check myself, especially in the arena where I was. And I think that's why she shared it with me.
Yeah.
Because obviously the job I do, I have to go in with a level of, so it's like apologizing for having a firm tone is defeating the purpose, really. So it was great feedback for me.
But what I love is how well you received that feedback. And I actually think a lot of people want great friendships. They want supportive friendships, but we don't like the challenge part. And it's so important to have that high support, high challenge, but you have to be ready to receive that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that's a journey I've been on because I'm a firstborn. I think for my whole life, I've had to learn to find the answers for myself. And that's not because I haven't had a supportive network. It's just what I've learned to do. So there's been times when I haven't always, as you all know, I haven't always reached out and asked for the help that I needed. And it was only in retrospect that I realized, oh my goodness, that is a step I should have created. And over time, I've learned to put that switch on because I didn't even know it was a switch that needed to come on. It happened so organically. And I think that's so important. If you want to be able to create a circle that's high trust, high challenge, receive great feedback that helps you to grow, you have to be intentional about receiving it in the right way. That's so important.
I agree. I would also add as well, though, it's important that as you get to know those in that trusted circle, that you also acknowledge the importance of delivering feedback with kindness and with empathy as well. You don't have to be brutally honest. You can be honest.
Absolutely.
There's a time and a place for the different delivery styles. And in some instances, the feedback isn't well received because of the delivery and the person's back is up and they become super defensive. And again, like, I think, Winnie, you do a fantastic job of this. Even when you're challenging, for example, you'll say something like, may I suggest an alternative? And then you have my ear. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a fantastic idea. But you know how to meet a person based on their communication preferences, and that encourages one to relax, to be open, and to really go away and reflect on it. So I really love that.
Oh, thanks.
Giving you your flowers.
No, but it is really, really, really important. I think for when you were talking, I was thinking that I attribute a lot of who I am to my socioeconomic background, right? So my confidence, my ambition, all of these things, it's like, well, actually, it's because of where I've come from. But on the flip side of it, I couldn't ask for help and I didn't take feedback well. And that also came from my socioeconomic background, in my opinion, because I've, earlier in my career, in my life, there wasn't anybody to ask for help and you had to do these things by yourself. And people often really take for granted how your life and your upbringing translates into the workplace. And so when you're fresh into the corporate space, or, you've got your first job and people are saying, well, give feedback, give your manager feedback. I'm sorry, but Where I grew up, where I came from, you wouldn't be given a senior manager feedback. But these are all things that you learn, and actually you have to seek out that learning. I don't think that learning always comes cup in hand. And then I think as Black women as well, as Black people, as ethnically diverse people, also there is another layer there that information doesn't come to you naturally. And so that's why creating networks are really important. Although they say your network is your net worth, I think we take it one step deeper. I think this sisterhood is not just about having a network. It's about who you can lean on, who you can cry to, who you can speak to, who can challenge you, who can check you, and who can celebrate you as well. And so, you know, it's important that we understand that this is a journey, and that there may be things that we have to unlearn. I had to unlearn that I have to do everything by myself. Right. And so once I unlearned that, then I could advocate for myself because I had people around me, I had you ladies, I have leaders that support me as well. So I just thought it was really important what you were saying about that piece around, you know, make sure you've got people around you.
Absolutely.
There's actually research around, I think it's the superhero or superwoman for Black women, where the expectations placed on us by society and then by ourselves, you know, not asking for help, wanting to do everything, blah, blah, blah. And it's just the unlearning of that and how that has seeped into every interaction and every relationship is so deep. Like when you unpack it, that you realize sometimes, like I'll say to Winnie, that's me projecting, that's my expectation, but it gets validated everywhere I go. I speak to my mom and she's like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. You speak to, you know, so it's just, unlearning it is like, I feel like it's a lifetime just trying. And you can't really self-advocate if you don't think you're worthy of what you're asking for. So I think the more we can unpack that and actually go, actually, I'm entitled to support. I'm entitled to help. Right? So I think it's really important.
It's so important. And one of the things I've had to unlearn, which has enabled me to advocate for myself a lot more, is that I am not a burden by asking for what it is that I want, even though at times, you know, the door has been closed, you know, in my face time and time again. But actually, it's so important that I find the courage to do it because others are looking to me as an example. And sometimes all it takes is one to have success in that area, to then lean into the power of storytelling and then uplift others and encourage them to do the same. So whilst we have many burdens that we're carrying, we have a lot to unlearn based on our life journey and everything else like that. It's also really important that we appreciate that the path that we're walking is sometimes bigger than us. You know, it's about those who will follow us, those who may be our peers and still haven't found their voice. So, Oh, ladies, thank you so much for sharing all that you did. I know I started off like on a very somber note, but really appreciate you unpacking this really important topic with me. And some of the takeaways that I'm leaving with are, you know, the importance of knowing your worth, backing yourself, and your network being your net worth, and really surrounding yourself with a sisterhood of people who want the best for you and want to see you thrive. Thank you for being my cheerleaders.
Thank you for being us.
And that wraps up another episode of Reclaiming Narratives, a podcast by us, the 4Ds. We hope you enjoyed our conversation and found some valuable insights today. If you loved what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favourite podcast platform. It really helps us reach more listeners like you. We'd also love to hear from you. Connect with us on Instagram and TikTok at the 4D Pod to join the conversation and share your thoughts on today's episode. You'll also find a link tree on our Instagram where we have curated some of our recommended resources to help you on your journey. Remember, every small intentional step you take makes a big difference. Until next time, keep reclaiming your narrative and take care. With love, the 4Ds.